There's so many streaming services to pick from, so how do you know which one you should be using? Let's talk about it. Hey, I'm DMS, you're watching the Headphone Show, and today we're going to take a dive into all the various music streaming services that you guys commonly use. Now, there's probably some that are off this list, but this, well, it's all of the main ones. Got my laptop open in front of me because there is a lot of notes here. I don't want to miss anything. And we have a special guest later in the video to help us talk about sound quality. First, let's talk about the contenders. We have Apple Music, Amazon HD, Qobuz, Tidal, Spotify, and Deezer. I know there's others like YouTube Music. We're not talking about that today. Let's start off with library size. It's kind of hard to find specific information on this because, well, they don't always exactly publish their numbers, and when they do, it's just a, hey, we have like so many million plus songs, which isn't really an exact number. So for the sake of this, we're just going to use words to quantify it. Apple Music and Amazon are both excellent in terms of library size. Qobuz isn't great, but it is constantly getting better. There's always things being added to it. Tidal has a great library size. Spotify is absolutely massive, and that's because artists can self-publish on there, which helps a lot. They just skip the aggregators and go straight to the distribution platform, which means sometimes you get small artists that are on Spotify, but not on other streaming services. And Deezer has a pretty great library size as well. That's honestly not too big of a concern with most streaming services these days. Though tying in with library size is the user experience, which can have problems sometimes, as you'll see with some of these. If you're not using a plugin on Apple Music, every time you're going to have to manually change the sample rate of your DAC to match the song. Now, luckily, it does do this on iPhone and iPad. Amazon HD, well, their interface is... They tried. Someone definitely tried. Really, the user experience, user interface is not great. I literally have here in my notes, Amazon HD UX, great if you are 3 years old. It's not a bad streaming service, it's just Amazon has a lot of money. They could do a lot better than that. Qobuz isn't bad. Their interface is sometimes slow, sometimes kind of weird. The downside is that, like on some other services, artists sometimes get blended together. So if someone's putting out music under an artist name and another artist comes along with the same name, they'll all just get clumped together as one artist. This did actually happen to me though on Tidal the other day, which sometimes suffers from the same problem. I was looking up the artist Lorne, and instead of Lorne, who makes these deep rumbling bass soundscapes, I got some SoundCloud rapper I wasn't familiar with and thought, this is not the artist I was looking for, but they're under the same page. It happens more on Qobuz, it seems, but it happens on other services like Tidal as well. Something cool about Tidal, though, is they're the only service to offer genuine 44.1 kHz bit perfect on Android. Tidal also has a pretty hefty amount of support. Just about any device you can think of, you can run Tidal. And there's no doubt that Spotify has a fantastic user interface. It's also nice being able to remote control it, because you can run Spotify on a PC and then control it with your phone. They have the Spotify car thing. That's literally what it's called. It's called the car thing, for playing music in your car or wherever else you actually decide to set up the car thing. And Deezer, well, it exists. I put it on a similar ranking to Qobuz in terms of user experience. It's not great. It can't compete with things like Spotify and Tidal and all that, but it's there. I mean, you're probably not going to struggle to use it. Out of all the ones on this list, Amazon is by far the worst as far as UI is concerned. Another category you probably care about is recommendations. Recommending you new music. That's kind of the benefit of streaming services. You could have a library of CDs, but it's not going to recommend you new things all the time. So for discoverability, we're not going to go through all of them. We're going to go through the ones that stand out. And the one that stands out here, well, that's Spotify. Spotify arguably has the best discoverability out of any of these streaming platforms. It's just known for having a great algorithm, a great radio. It's just known for, you want more music like this? Here's an infinite amount of more music like this. Have fun listening. Go nuts. I can't tell you how much great music I discovered when I was using Spotify. Tidal's is actually pretty good too. In fact, I would put it just under Spotify. Still pretty good. I didn't land on quite as many bangers, but I still got a lot of things added to my library that, well, I would never have discovered otherwise. Apple Music is okay. The thing with Apple Music is they tend to just want to recommend pop to you over everything else. It's like, oh, You want to listen to Pink Floyd? Cool. Here's a new rap album. Apple Music says, oh, I see that you like Jimi Hendrix. How about some Taylor Swift? I don't want that. If you're really, really into pop music, Apple Music is going to give you a lot of recommendations you like. If you're not into pop music, you should probably look elsewhere for recommendations. But you know what? Let's get into sound quality with my good friend, Golden Sound.
There are a lot of things to consider when thinking about what music streaming service you want to go with, but for those prioritizing sound quality over everything else, whether or not a streaming service has lossless music streaming could be the most important factor. Lossless means that the digital information being served to you, the customer, is exactly the same as what the artist provided to the publisher, with no loss or alteration. A number of streaming services do advertise lossless music streaming as a feature, but whether or not you can actually play this music losslessly is a slightly more difficult question. In order to be able to stream and play lossless music, you need three things. The first of which is that, well, your streaming service needs to have lossless music available to provide to you. The second is you need a way of playing this music bit perfect, i.e. between being handed to you and outputting to your DAC, the data doesn't get changed, because it's no good having a lossless file provided to you if it goes through the Windows mixer and gets altered and changed before being output to your DAC. And the third, which is kind of an extension of the second point, is you need a player which can change the sample rate of your DAC to match whatever the sample rate of the track is. Otherwise, the audio has to be resampled, and again, it won't be lossless.
No! God, please, no! No!
Starting with Apple Music, you can stream lossless files up to 192 kHz 24-bit, but whilst on iOS this just works, on macOS it doesn't change your DAC sample rate automatically. So you either need to manually change it in the MIDI control settings to match whatever the track rate is, or you can get around this using the free lossless switcher tool, which there'll be a link to in the description. So if you have an Apple device, Apple Music is lossless and can be played bit perfect. If you have a Windows PC, Apple won't let you stream lossless because Apple. On Android, due to a limitation of the OS itself, 44.1 kHz content gets resampled to 48 kHz, so you can't play bit perfect or lossless for most songs. Amazon HD is in a similar situation. It's got lossless files up to 192 kHz, and if you disable volume normalization, which is on by default, and enable exclusive mode, it will play bit perfect. But it won't change your DAC sample rate. So on Windows, every time you play a song with a different sample rate, you have to manually change your DAC sample rate if you want to stay lossless, and on Android, it doesn't get past the 44.1 kHz resampling issue. Qobuz is practically perfect here. It's got lossless files up to 192 kHz, it'll output bit perfect via exclusive mode or to an ASIO device, that's pretty nice. It's got Roon and Audivana integration as well, so network streaming bit perfect's easy. Whilst the Android app doesn't get past the 44.1 kHz sampling rate issue on its own, you can get around this by buying USB Audio Player Pro. It's a few dollars, but it supports Tidal, Qobuz, and local files, and it allows you to play everything, including 44.1 kHz content, bit perfect. Tidal is probably the most well-known lossless music streaming service, and for any track on Tidal which does not have the master badge, you can indeed stream lossless. It's capped at 44.1 kHz, but their player will output bit perfect and properly adjust DAC sample rate when exclusive mode is turned on, and they are the only streaming service whose Android app gets around the 44.1 kHz sampling rate issue, so well done to Tidal for that. But there are some problems. The big problem with Tidal is that an increasing number of tracks no longer have lossless versions available. Anything on Tidal with the master badge does not have a lossless copy, and even if you are not on the Hi-Fi Plus tier, or if you are but you've got your quality settings set to Hi-Fi only, you will always be served the MQA version. The only difference between the file served to you as a Hi-Fi subscriber versus as a Hi-Fi Plus subscriber is that one of them has MQA flagging to tell your DAC that it's MQA. The actual data itself is entirely the same and not lossless in either case. If you'd like to learn a bit about why you might want to avoid MQA and why it's not quite what it seems, I actually got some music published on Tidal and I published some videos discussing my findings here. Deezer is another music streaming service which advertises lossless music streaming, and whilst they do have lossless music and do stream lossless music to you, there is no way to play it losslessly because their player doesn't have a bit perfect output. Hopefully this is something they will change in the future because it should be relatively easy to add, but at the moment the only way to actually play the lossless music from Deezer losslessly is to use a network streamer rather than the Windows client. And lastly, Spotify is the largest music streaming service in the world at the moment, but they don't have a lossless tier. It's something which they said that they'll add in the future, but we don't know when this will be coming. So if you want to stream and play lossless music, right now Qobuz is probably your best bet, or Apple Music if you have an Apple device. The others can sometimes be lossless, but sometimes is the keyword there.
There's a lot of great information out there on YouTube, but I always feel like Golden does an incredible job with his research, so thank you, Golden, for being a part of this video. He's got some pretty cool stuff coming out on this channel that takes a deep dive into audio, so make sure you stick around, subscribe, you're not going to want to miss that. So that's going to wrap this one up. I hope that this was helpful. There's just so many options, and a lot of things might or might not be deal breakers for you. So I'll do my best to divide this video into chapters. Hopefully that'll be helpful, and you can narrow in on the things that matter the most to you. So that is going to wrap up this video, guys. If you liked it, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can have the forum or Discord, both available at the link in the video description. As always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until the next one, guys. Peace.